Guys, there's a lot of confusing shit out there when it comes to getting your training and programming on point. Now, the thing I want to talk about today is the paradox of rest and recovery. This is literally the crux of all training programs ever. How they balance the stress that grows you with the recovery that grows you. And it is a paradox because it's unintuitive. It seems at times that you're supposed to do both at the same time in a way that you can't. And there's schools of thought that go all in on one at the expense of the other. So we're going to get to the bottom of that. Now, this started bouncing around in my head because of the videos that Mr. Israel had been putting out recently. Just moments before I started making this video, he had put up a video about hard work being detrimental to training. And before that, he had put a video out talking about a month off every year as being not just like a good idea, but potentially vital for your long-term success. Now, as I would guess, out of all the people that train, all the people that subscribe to these types of videos and consider themselves lifters, you probably have 15% that train with too much stress. However, 10% of those people, it's not the stress, it's the shitty diet, the shitty sleep, maybe the job or family life is too stressful and they should lower the stress to compensate for that. Or, this is the one nobody wants to talk about, their programming sucks. Just because you're doing a lot of work and not seeing results doesn't mean that a lot of work is the problem. The way you organize the work is extraordinarily important. And if your split doesn't make any sense, if the order of your exercises doesn't make sense, all of that could be contributing to an inability to respond to what would otherwise be a pretty mediocre amount of work. I would say on the order of 5% of people overall probably train too hard or too manic, use lifting as a form of self-harm, and even their diet and sleep really isn't the thing holding them back. They just need to be less of a maniac in the gym or be a little bit better about incorporating deloads or resets. It's a very small group of people. Most of those people, when they hang around long enough, actually figure it out and end up getting really fucking strong and really competitive. On the other end of that curve, I'd say about 15% of people are just fine. They have a good balance of stress and recovery. We know they're just fine because they are consistently making progress. And as long as they don't get in their own way, they're going to continue doing that until they end up with something that looks like a competitive package, because it's not the magic 10% growth you get from this training block. It's any amount of growth done repeatedly over and over from each training cycle long term. This is very much tortoise in the hare, guys. Stop trying to speed run your way through each block. Now, in the middle of that is the 70% of people who think they do enough. They get offended when you recommend staples like work harder, eat, sleep, programming. But in actuality, I've never been within 10 square miles of somebody who is actually a competitive lifter and has no frame of reference for what that work ethic actually does look like. Most of these people are delusional about how hard they don't work and would be better off spending a year in a training camp where everybody kicks them in the ass every time they miss a workout, every time they sandbag a set, every time they stop doing the thing that was working to go fuck around because of their shiny object syndrome. Now, like I said, all program boils down to stress and recovery. The stress is the exercise you pick, the effort you put into it, how much effort you put into it, what type of stress is it? Now, if you are accumulating workouts day after day, week after week, and you're training hard enough to grow, that builds up fatigue. And that's where you're in what you should look forward to, those runs of training where you're just trashed after every workout. You're dragging your ass out of bed. You feel beat, but you know every time you take that pre-workout, get your ass to the gym, that it's like PR City, or you feel yourself changing, you feel yourself growing, getting stronger, getting more dialed into the movements. Those are the great times to be alive, but you feel the fatigue accumulate. That becomes unsustainable, especially given the diminished returns of the training you're doing. When you do the same type of training week after week after week, you don't just keep going up indefinitely. Eventually, the response is diminished. You get diminished returns. But if the effort and the fatigue is still really, really high, you end up kind of inverting that balance between stress and recovery, and you either backslide or you just stagnate. Nothing happens. Now, assuming you have just the absolute best evidence-based, scientifically proven workouts, exercises, tempo, execution, everything's perfect. You're getting the perfect amount of stress, the right kind of stress, the right amount of stress. Now you need to consider the recovery dynamics so that your body is actually allowed to use its resources to build tissue and not just keep you alive through the next workout. But it should be self-evident to you at this point that that recovery is earned. You don't start with the recovery. You start by killing yourself. And then once your body's about to tap out at St. Mercy, that's where you come in with the recovery. Now, training ideologies do what they do. They focus on one thing and they try to make that the center of the universe, the only thing that matters, even though there's like a billion different variables that are all relevant. And recovery is no different. You have on one far side, you have something like high intensity and those weirdo cultists that think that there's something wrong with adding volume to see growth, which is the most like universally demonstrated phenomenon in like all of lifting culture. But their entire premise focuses solely on the recovery aspect, that the more recovery you get, the more opportunity you have to grow, and you want to maximize that as much as possible. The problem is that extra recovery doesn't do dick unless you gave yourself a sufficient reason to grow. And if you've been doing the same one set to failure on the same limited number of exercises, on the same split, indefinitely, diminished returns kick in, you haven't changed enough dials, fucked with the settings enough to register a new stimulus to your body, and you're going to hit a plateau. And the exceptions to that, of course, are people that are freak hyper responders, people that are on a lot of gear, usually both. But if you are a mere mortal, you need to make use of every tool in your arsenal. So it's not enough just to focus on recovery. You're going to have to tweak your training. You're going to have to cycle volume like every other sport in the world does. On the complete other end, you have the people that don't give a shit about recovery. Just more. You'll figure it out. There's no deloads in the jungle, bro. And people like that messaging, but it's extraordinarily flawed. For one, completely different to take a group of people and throw them through the meat grinder in hopes of getting 2 or 3 world champions. That's wildly different than saying, hey, this method we're going to give to a whole bunch of people and tell them it's best for them to do this. That math doesn't work out. You need, yes, genetics, gear, but you also need sufficient motivation to train like that on your own, which people think they have. Nobody fucking has. The Bulgarian team, everybody was on gear. Not everybody survived the training. What do you think your odds are, given that you don't have the genetics? You weren't tested or selected for that predisposition. You have Westside. Westside was maxing every single week, rotating the movements so that you could get away with that, not burn out. It was high volume on the accessory. It was more GPP because more conditioning means we can handle more volume and then train harder. Same thing, Westside was defined by its training culture, so there was motivation built in there that you cannot get anywhere else. And the training culture actually suffered, a lot of people don't know this, when a lot of the maniacs cycled out and they had to adjust the training to compensate for the lack of the vicious training environment that carried everybody through. This video is of course brought to you by Base Strength AI. You might relate to being confused or frustrated from running complex programs. We created a personalized app that gives moment-by-moment instruction to your program based on your immediate performance. When you use Base Strength AI, you can be confident that you're having the most personalized training experience available beyond what even an online coach could do for you. And the result is the peace of mind in knowing that every set and rep you do is taking you one step closer to your goals. It's my programming, but it's your program. To get Base Strength AI, click the link below. So here's what you need to know about recovery. For short term, it's the workout. You do the good workout, you get the stress, and then recovery is good night's sleep, making sure you're eating enough, making sure you have a reasonable amount of time until the next workout. Maybe you're a once a week guy and you're actually trying to get all that growth before you get into the next workout. Maybe you're a little higher frequency than that, and you're really just trying to make sure you're good enough to get a hard workout in. Because if you go 12 hours later, you're still going to be blown. But if you go 3 days later, you'll be able to hit similarly high numbers and actually see progress in that time. Now, this applies to everybody. Everybody needs short-term recovery management, no matter who you are. Novice, advanced, you got to make sure that you're able to pace your workouts and do the things in between those workouts that allow you to grow to begin with. This is like lifting 101. This isn't new. The medium term is where we get a little more focused and specialized. This is more for intermediates, people that have gotten strong enough to actually cause some damage on their body with a hard effort. You're not going to overtrain if you only bench 95 pounds because you're not strong enough to overtrain your body to that capacity. But once you get stronger, the recovery dynamic's a little bit different. And this is where the paradox kicks in. It seems like you need more work to keep driving up, but as you're stronger, it also seems like you simultaneously need more recovery. The stress in the medium term, it's workout to workout. So between this workout and next workout, I'm not just doing the good workouts, I'm actually trying to improve and see stress go up. Even if I'm not stronger, I'm still trying to handle more weight, expose myself to more in some capacity. Now, the way you meet that with recovery is by assuming that that's not going to last forever. So as you see this diminish returns, you're going hard, getting really fatigued. That fatigue's accumulating. Eventually, you deload. If you're training hard enough to see that growth, you're training hard enough to build fatigue, and that's not sustainable. So before you just plateau out and get frustrated and go kick your dog, you hit a deload or you reset. You can also just rotate into something else, especially hypertrophy guys. That has an element of recovery built in. New exercises, switching to a different rep range. It takes a couple weeks before you're adapted enough to where you're really going hard and really taxing your body. So you don't even necessarily need true deloads or resets. You just need something that's going to give you a break from all the stress that you've been doing in that exact same way. You know, here's the thing, long term, this is where you get into like really focused periodization programming for strength athletes. You're talking about string blocks of training together, people that are experienced, have specific competition goals, usually strength goals more so than hypertrophy. And this is what we like talking about when we're picking apart the training programs of the greats and looking at periodization templates and on and on. Bodybuilders, hypertrophy guys don't need that whatsoever unless you're talking about what you do going into a prep, which might be a little different, but just for the long-term accumulation of hypertrophy, you don't need to consider long-term cycling in this way. Very, very few people it applies to. In fact, there's even really strong athletes, people that are on their way up, who aren't better off doing this. I would say it's people who are either advanced, or even if they're not advanced, they are so dialed in, so perfect, so vicious and consistent with their training that their brain is just overheating like an engine. I have been doing this for a very long time. I can count the number of people I ran into who fit that bill probably on one hand. And I'll even admit, when I take time off throughout the year, which I do liberally, it's really just because I want to. It has nothing to do with my goals. In fact, if I was hungry in the next 3 years, if I was going to bring the best package I could, there's no shot in hell I would be doing that shit. I'd be putting my immediate mental health, my immediate physical comfort on the back burner so that I could just cram as much training economy into my week as I could. And the idea of taking a month off to interrupt that, that's a luxury. And the people that are best off doing that are the people that have been redlining it for so long in such a perfect capacity. They're the people that we already make documentaries about. You do not fall into that category. So no matter what school of thought you subscribe to, you need to do enough work of the right type of work with enough effort. You get a stress, and you just need to eat, sleep, make sure that you're reasonably in good shape going into the next workout. If you can do that consistently, drive progress over a block, and then successfully transition into another block, either by doing a deload, doing a reset, or just changing the training parameters, you're going to be A-okay. Most of you, almost all of you, are not seeing results. If you're not seeing results, it's because there's some failure to do the foundational stuff that you don't want to admit in public that you don't actually do. But if you're being honest, there is room to work harder. There's room to tighten up consistency. You're hopping around too much. You're not taking it seriously. So hopefully that clears some stuff up and is less confusing rather than more confusing. It's not so much that I take issue with things being said that are incorrect, but you can take a correct thing and sell it to the wrong person and it becomes a very, very incorrect thing. And I think that's something that we all have responsibility to observe and to check. So let me know what you think. Leave your comments below. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Till next time, this is Bromley. I'll see you.